This designer is probably better known for his co-designs than his solo designs. Welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Hello and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Mr. Nate Clark, and seated a decent portion across the world from me would be your other co-host, Mr. Cody Pennington.
You know, I was going to say across the ocean from you, which would probably still be correct, except I'm on the West Coast, so across the ocean and then some land. How's that?
Technically, if the Panama Canal is open, you could still follow ocean all the way to you, kind of.
Is the canal really an ocean, though, Nate?
Well, you could go around Cape Horn, right, in South America?
Okay, so seated around the ocean?
Yes. That would take a long time, though.
Stellar.
We would definitely have
Hey,
a delay.
people have done it, man.
People have done it. That's true.
Hey, if they could do it in the 1500s, why can't we?
Because I'm too lazy. That's why.
Yeah, well, okay. Tell me something I don't
Also,
know.
I'm not sure I used the word portion correctly. I said you were seated
Portion.
a fair portion or a decent portion across the world. Like a decent portion of
Of the world?
space across the world. I'm not sure if I used that right or not.
Should we waste everyone's time and take this moment to look up the definition of a portion?
Well, I can hear you looking it up, so I'm assuming that was a rhetorical question.
So a part of a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it is a part of a whole, right? The whole
Ooh.
Earth, it's part of that.
Get this here. It has a second definition: archaic, a person's destiny or lot.
Yeah, your portion in life.
So seated an amount of destiny away from you.
Ooh, however many people are in between, that many portions.
That's a lot of destinies, man.
It's a lot of portions. All right, Cody. I feel like we should probably start talking about games before we lose our entire audience. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Actually, I'm looking up on Board Game Geek to see if there's any games about portions, but I can't find anything now.
You're just looking for a segue. Is what you're looking for. Let's be honest.
Well, last time, man, we got the Cheez-It thing. I don't know if you remember that. Cheez-It Scrabble Jr. It was like this perfect segue, but Board Game Geek let me down.
That's true. Yeah.
It's nothing for portions.
Okay. Well, I'll take that as a signal that I should probably start, and you can compose yourself.
Do your thing, man.
As always, a few repeats, but also a few new things to mention. I guess I'll mention in passing that we test played Kung Feud a little bit more, your 2-player card game.
Aha.
And yeah, it was fun. I like it. The added player powers are good, and there's a lot of playtesting in the future for that game. So.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I did the math and figured out that with the 10 players, there are 45 different matchups that we'd have to test.
And then you want to test those all multiple times also.
Multiple times, yeah.
Yeah, at least like 5 each. So now you're at like, what, 225? Sheesh.
Yeah, hey, good quick math, man. I'm
Thanks,
impressed.
man. Any chance to show off my skills? Okay. I also played Dominion. I was going to try and say how many times, but I don't remember how many times. So my skills failed me there. Yeah, some more digital Dominion. It's a lot of fun. I think the Guild's expansion and actually the Intrigue expansion were both unlocked there. Yeah, there's actually 2 expansions right now, or at least the other day there were 2 free ones on the app. So I don't really know what their market strategy is, but I'm perfectly happy to not buy any expansions if they'll just keep making them periodically free.
Genius.
So that's been fun. I like Dominion a lot, actually. A lot. I think since I've been playing it so much recently, it's actually risen a little bit on my top 100.
Oh.
So yeah.
I think it went down for me.
That's fair. It's not a game for everybody, but I really enjoy it.
You know, this is still in, okay, maybe spoiler alert. I don't know how far you've gotten. I think it was in Tom Vassel's top 10.
I have not watched the last one yet, so that maybe it was his 11 though. It was definitely mentioned in the 11 through 20, but I don't know.
It might have been People's Choice.
Yeah, I think it was.
But anyway, I
Um,
didn't spoil that or anything. Nope.
I also played Machikoro actually just this morning, again with both the expansions thrown in,
Space
and
base without the space.
space without the space, and almost without the base. It's like it's like in a way it's kind of a city building game because you're drafting like you're buying like wheat fields and like buildings and stuff. So it's like you could kind of call it a city building game, but it's not like it's not at all, So, but yeah, it's a fun game. Um, Also played a couple card games, like just with a deck of cards. One of them is one that I've played for a while, maybe even taught you before.
Hmm.
It goes by a lot of different names and a lot of different rule sets. The name I know it by is like Cambio or Combio, but it also goes by Dutch or Cactus or a plethora of other names. But it's kind of like golf, where you have like the four cards face down in front of you. Um, but then you're trying to not get points, and the on your turn you like draw a card, and a lot of the cards have special powers that let you peek at your cards, peek at other people's cards, switch cards around. um, and then whenever a card is discarded, if you have a copy of it, you can like get rid of your card, or you can get rid of someone else's and then give them one of yours. So it's a fun game. We played it with like 7 or 8 people, which I feel like is a bit too much, but yeah, it's fun. Have we played that at all? I feel like we
That
have.
that does not ring a bell for me, bro.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So that's a card game. And then we
Cool.
also played. I don't actually know what it's called. I should have looked it up because a French guy taught it to us, and he just called it chicken because he was like, "We call it this in French, but I just call it chicken in English." So again, it was just with a deck of cards, and it was like a partner game where you're trying to get four of a kind in your hand, or your partner's also trying to do that. And when you do get four of a kind, you give your partner a secret signal that was predetermined between you two at the beginning of the game.
Hmm.
And then then you can lay your cards down. If like if I get four of a kind, I would give the signal to my partner, and then he would call chicken, and then we would get a point for that round. But you can also be watching other people, and if you think you see a signal, you can call someone out, and if you're right, you get a point. But if you're wrong, you lose a point, basically. So it's kind of a
Hmm.
almost not really a deception game, but you're trying to subtly think of a really subtle signal kind of to use.
Yeah,
But other
that's
than that,
cool.
it's kind of just I guess you would say set collection game. I don't know. Okay, and then on to the meat, on to the
Oh,
interesting,
okay.
the stuff
Good.
that you
I thought
came
that's
for.
all you had.
No, 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 Cody, come on, you know me better than that.
All right, knocking me socks and
Um,
nothing, man.
don't ever repeat that on the air. Okay, I played a few new games, one of which was one that I've been wanting to play for quite a while, yet another city building game, and it uses the drafting mechanism from Meadow. Well, actually, technically, Meadow uses the drafting mechanism from this game because this game
Ah,
came first. Do you know what this is?
I just saw it recently, but I don't remember what it's called.
You have a short memory. Quadropolis.
Oh yeah, it was Quadropolis, man. Did you know
Yeah,
that?
I feel like I did. Um, Not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed. Um, Maybe I'm disappointed because of Meadow. Like in Meadow, the drafting is interesting because your so it's just like Meadow. You have a grid of, in this case, tiles, and you draft them. You have four different workers labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. You draft them by sticking them somewhere on the perimeter, and then you count that many in for whichever number you used, and that's the tile you get. You know, um, in Meadow, those pieces you use, the numbered pieces, have a second action on them that can be used in a different way. And this game does not have that. And I feel like that was one of the things that I felt like I was missing. Because in my
Hmm.
head, I was kind of comparing it to Meadow because they have that same core mechanism. And I felt like I was really missing that from this game. And then also the actual city building aspect. You're drafting tiles and building a city on a grid. Like the scoring was
Hmm.
so run of the mill. Like
Okay.
it's the same kind of like, I don't remember if you remember how Between Two Cities scored, but it's
Yeah.
similar to that. I feel like I want to play more city games that have actual interesting ways of scoring, not just, hey, multiple of these, you get this many points that compound, or these next to these will give you more points. It's just in a
Hmm.
way like Suburbia is the same way. They just all they're just boring. You know what I mean? Like it's just boring.
I
And
probably shouldn't
so,
teach you Glasgow then.
no, is it the same thing?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And so is Tiny Towns. Tiny Towns I like because the actual puzzly way of placing your buildings is interesting. But again, it just the scoring in all these games is so boring. So every time I've played a city game, I feel like I've gotten burned by that. But I
Hmm.
still want to find a city game that is actually interesting and has a novel way of scoring.
Okay,
Yeah. Those are my gripes with Quadropolis. So
gotcha.
I my hopes were high and I did not walk away from it enjoying it too much. But I also played a game called Sagrada, which is decently popular. I think it might be
Hmm.
in the top 200 or so. This is a dice drafting game where you are kind of, it's these really cool, like, well, the idea is you're making like a stained glass window. And so they are kind of translucent, nice colored dice. And
Yeah, I've seen
you
pictures.
have, yeah, the game looks nice. It looks nice. And you have like this double layered board that you slide a card in, and that card will give you some like there's like a grid. It's like a 5x4 or 5x5 or something like that with all these spots where you can set your dice in, and you slide a card in that lays some restrictions, like some certain color restrictions on some spots or number restrictions on other spots. And then there's a couple of general rules, like you can't place colors next to each other and you can't place numbers adjacent to each other. And so then you go back and forth for 10 rounds drafting dice and placing them into your grid. But then, of course, as with all games, you have a personal scoring card that you chose, and then there's a few public scoring cards, and then there's also a few special power cards that you can activate throughout the game. So I actually enjoyed that one quite a bit. The game looks nice; it's pretty good production quality as well, and even though it's pretty light, I found that it was actually a lot of fun, and there's a lot of different combinations of things that could happen. Like there's a lot of different papers that you can slide into your grid to change the complexity. Some of them are more complex, others are a lot easier. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of those to pick from, as well as lots of different public scoring cards and special power cards and stuff. So I actually thought it was pretty great. And I know there's a second one also that I'm not familiar with, like the Stained Glass of Sintra or something. Um,
Oh.
but anyways, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't know if you are familiar with it at all.
No, it came up at least once, maybe twice on the top 100 this year. So that's, I think, my main experience with it.
Yeah. Um, it's fun, but it's definitely a lighter weight. I don't know what it's been kind of put at on BGG, but it's definitely a lighter weight game. It's not even that thinky, but it was still delightful. I think it was still
Hmm.
fun.
Okay.
And then last of all, Anna and I played Fog of Love. You familiar with this one?
Uh, that's just my life, man.
All right, let's definitely not get into that. Not only am I not interested, but I don't think anybody else is.
Ah,
So,
dang it.
and actually, I just looked up Sagrada. It is on BGG, so for what it's worth, it's a 1.92 out of 5. So
Oh,
definitely
wow.
not a heavy game by any means.
Okay.
Um, Fog of Love is weird. I've never really been super interested in it. It's kind of like the idea is that it's like the story of two people that meet and kind of their life together. And so we just played through the tutorial thing, which still took about an hour and a half. But
Wow.
basically, you each kind of create a character with different traits and some different personal goals. And then as you go throughout the game, there's a bunch of different scenarios that come up. And like you go back and forth playing cards from your hand that present a scenario that either one or both of you will secretly answer and then reveal at the same time. And depending
Hmm.
on how your answers, like depending on the card and what you both answered, there will be a certain effect. And you have these 6 different traits that you're almost like a personality test. There's like 6 different traits that you can either be high on or low on, and your different answers to these will affect where you are on those traits. And those traits are important because of your like personal kind of scoring cards. So it's interesting. Honestly, I, I was intrigued by it while we were playing it, and I think Anna also was pretty intrigued by it. And I think it's something that I could see us getting in the future just to explore more and really kind of delve in and see what the potential of the game is. Because after
Hmm.
one play, I'm not even really entirely sure I understand it. So it's a really kind of a kind of a weird one for sure.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
You would probably recognize the cover if you take a second to look it up. It's like a white cover with a pink girl and a blue guy or something standing next to each other.
I don't recognize that.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Fog of Love, not even in the top 1,000 on BGG. So, whatever. It's trash, really.
Well, all right then. Cool story, bro.
Yeah, lots of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely one-upped you this week.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah, got some plays for Kung Feud, as we said. That was actually immediately after our last episode. Or our
That's
last
true.
Recording. Played Champions of Midgard once more.
With both expansions.
With both expansions. I got burned on one turn, man.
What happened? Tell me your woes.
I divided up my dice between like 3 different fights.
3 is a lot. You can do it in a 2-player game, but it's a lot.
But they weren't particularly terrible enemies, and I had I think I had like 5 horns to use.
Okay,
and
so you're set, right?
The first fight, all I needed was 1 hit, and I think there was only 1 blank side on the die I was using. Maybe there were 2 blank sides. I rolled like 4 blanks in a row. No, it may have been 5. I think I used up every single one of my horns on it. I should have just stopped and cut my losses, but I'm like, it has to happen at some point.
It has to. Were you rolling the black die?
I want to say it was the pink one, maybe.
The pink one.
Yeah, maybe it was.
Might only have the black one has 2 empty spaces. I think the pink one only has 1.
Yeah, I think you're right. So that's how it started. That was like one of the
crazy.
The burgers are. I think I won the second one. And then the third one, like I lost a die the first round to where it was just impossible for me to actually win. Like I forget the situation with the monster, but I needed more die. Like it was impossible for me to actually kill the monster. So
that's funny. Well, was it one of the special? Was it one of the special monsters? Because some of them, like in the expansions, it's not. Some of them have like special kind of powers or special.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, things you have to do, which I like.
It may have been something like that. So yeah, that was my cool story for Champions of Midgard. I think that experience actually lowered the game a little bit in my mind because it reminded me that this is a dice chucker, and sometimes you're at the mercy of the dice.
I mean, it is, but as long as you frame the game that way, right? As long as you don't frame it as like a Euro game, like as like a straight, no luck involved kind of Euro-y type game. Same with like Quacks of Quedlinburg. Like it's just about the enjoyment you get from the game. And so like you can also like Quacks can also be really frustrating sometimes as well, So
Oh, for sure. Well, over the course of that game for the second time, it was the second time I played it in maybe like 2 weeks or something. I think I just realized, okay, I'm going to preface this. I still love the game. It is still very high. It
sounds like a disclaimer.
I know. I think is it my top 10? It is in my top 10, and it's probably going to stay up there.
Okay.
But I think my journey with this game was I first played it with you a couple of years ago. I was like, interesting game. And then you kept bringing it over time. I was like, it's a pretty cool game. And then it was like right before you left for Germany, I think maybe we played it again. I was like, I love this game. I need to buy this game.
Well, that was when also when we played with the expansion too, because we had not played with it earlier than that.
That's true. So maybe it was revitalized in my mind and heart.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, what an awesome game. And then I finally got it. And so I guess I just kind of been riding this high, and it's still an excellent game. But I think what I experienced, especially over the second game that I played just recently, is that I feel like I only have one primary strategy in the game. Maybe not a primary strategy, but there's like a couple main points that I approach. It's like I want to get that extra worker as early as possible because that will compound over however many rounds are left to do the thing. You get a lot of points from those destiny cards, and so you like to combine looking at one of the journey cards for one of the monsters you're going to go to attack, so you
Hmm.
can get a destiny card at the same time. So I kind of always do that, and then I just get the dice and fight the people. And it's obviously a very tactical game, but to me it feels like there's only maybe one or two primary strategies. And so when I realized it was a little more simplified in that way, I was like, it's
Yeah,
probably going to
that's
be kind
definitely
of the same
true.
experience every time.
But I think that's why having both of the expansions makes the game so much better. Is
Mm.
you have different enemies to fight, which is cool. You have some enemies with unique things that show up, not just a hit points and an attack thing. Um, but then the Valhalla expansion, especially, gives you another aspect to be thinking of uh, when you're killing dice in a battle, when
Mm.
you pick which dice to kill, and when you're like you have these other things that you kind of have to be thinking about, and it gives you lots of opportunities to get dice. And so I don't know. I mean I know what you mean, because generally it's like, well, you just got to go fight monsters. Like that's kind of the core of the game. And if you're not doing that, you aren't going to win, really.
Yeah,
So
pretty much. I mean,
yeah,
you're going to lose out not just on the points from them, but then also the sets that you can get, extra 5 points if you get the
yeah.
colors. So yeah. And then as is my tradition, whenever I'm get a game for myself that you have once taught me, I go through and make sure, and I look for the places that you taught it incorrectly.
Was there anything
The rulebook does not specify anywhere that when you take the first player marker that it resets the same round.
that it resets the same round? Oh, I'm
Normally,
pretty sure it does, but I mean, I'll believe you if you've looked at the rulebook more recently than
I did
I.
explore it. And then with the Valhalla expansion, you don't have the deck of the epic monsters. You only put out two for the entire game, for like the top two super cards that you can get with your
Yeah,
tokens.
I thought that depended on player count, or there's a
It
certain amount depending on the player count, right?
it does. There's two up until I think a 4 or 5 player game. Then you only play with three. But I feel
Okay,
like when we played, you had like the whole deck out, and
it's
once one got taken, you flipped
possible.
it over.
That's
So
possible.
that's my Nate was wrong update for
Okay,
you.
okay. Well, I feel like this is becoming a Champions of Midgard episode, which it isn't. So,
Okay, good point. I played 5 digital games of Scythe.
yeah. Okay. Well,
Okay. I know I said I was going to one up you, but that was a joke, and then it kind of got lost in the mire of talking about Champions of Midgard. Yeah, I've not played very much this week, man.
oh, okay. All right.
So
Well,
yeah,
I believed you very much when you said that. So
that's my cool
maybe it was
story.
good that we spent so much time talking about Champions of Midgard then to make
Maybe
your.
instead, maybe instead we should talk about the game of the week.
Okay, I think the game of the week this week is one that you probably treasure, rate, and enjoy. I don't know if I want to say significantly more than I do, but definitively more, at least.
Where is this on your top hundo? Before we even
I
say what
know
it is.
it's higher than 40. Well, lower, whatever. Better than 40. It's somewhere in the 30s.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
would not say I dislike Paladins of the West Kingdom, but I also wouldn't say
Oh, you
that I
spoiled it, man.
yeah, I did. Well, it's going to get spoiled at some point.
Oh, okay.
I
Dang it.
also wouldn't say that I really like it either. I think it's a solid game, and I've also spoiled my opinion on it also now a little bit. I'll have more to say.
Yeah.
I'll have more to say.
So let's move on to our board banter for this week.
It's going to be a short episode despite our
Yeah.
lengthy discussion of Champions of Midgard.
Uh, well, Paladins for me is at 15, which actually it has dropped. It was in the top 10 for me last year, and this year it is a little bit
But you've
lower.
also probably played it less, right?
Uh, maybe. I think maybe other games have just kind of replaced it a little bit, or my esteem for the game has dropped just a little bit. But Paladins of the West Kingdom, Nate, thank you for not spoiling it, is our game of the week.
You're welcome.
A remarkable Shem Phillips game. So this would be the okay. So we had the North Sea trilogy. I think this was the third one that came out in the West Kingdom
No, no,
trilogy,
no.
right? It
No, it
was
was the second one. It was
no.
Architects and then this and then Viscounts.
Oh, Viscounts is the most recent, isn't
Yeah.
it? Okay. For some reason, I think Paladins is probably the heaviest. So for some reason, I picture that as the third one. But yeah, you're right. Viscounts came out
Do you
more
think
recently.
Paladins is heavier than Viscounts?
I think it is. I think Viscounts just has more stuff going on to where it's a little bit harder to track, perhaps. But I think Paladins requires a bit more in-depth strategy and planning.
I guess it depends on how you measure complexity, because you're right. Viscounts definitely is harder to wrap your mind around, and there is more going on. But also at the same time, Viscounts feels a little more chaotic, whereas Paladins feels a little more like it's easier to wrap your mind around, but then actually doing well at it and actually like being efficient and maximizing what you do in the game is maybe more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Viscounts is a salad because it's literally kind of a point salad. Paladins is a steak that you've really got to get your knife in there and you've got to tear it apart. Know what I'm saying?
What is Architects?
It's a perfect analogy. Architects is like dessert. Architects is a crumpet.
I was going to say appetizer, but salad's kind of an appetizer.
You know what? I would call it some like queso and chips, or maybe some nachos. Yeah.
Okay, so you got a steak at a Mexican restaurant?
Well, it's Mexican steak.
Mexican steak. All right. Moving on.
Well, do you get a salad at a Mexican restaurant? I'm not saying this was a Mexican place. You get. I was thinking like Applebee's.
You said queso and chips as an appetizer.
Sure.
I mean, that's a Mexican restaurant.
That's Applebee's, man.
I've never been to Applebee's. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, this isn't the Applebee's episode. Although now I'm going to look up and see if there's an Applebee's
of course you are. While you do that, I will discuss Paladins Lewis Kingdom a little bit. So
there is not.
This is we've only ever played this with 2 players, and it barely fits on your table. This is a huge table hog, this game.
Yeah, for sure.
But this is a pretty, I would say, a decently heavy worker placement game, where you are drafting workers every round. There's about, 7, 8 rounds, something like that. Every round you draft workers, and then you use those workers on, most of the game happens on your own player board, actually. Where you are basically, there's a bunch of different actions you can choose from, and a lot of those actions can be made cheaper or made better in some ways, but they also will get more difficult the more that you do them. Like there's certain requirements that you have to meet the more often you do the different actions on your board. And there's also a lot of cards that you can get in different ways. There's 2 different decks of cards, right? There's helpers that you can there's helpers and there's like foes, kind of. And both of those
townsfolk and then enemies.
Yeah, and you have 2 options for both of those. So like the townsfolk, you can either recruit or you can just take for a one-time bonus. And then also with the foes, whatever those guys were, the enemies.
Might be like barbarians.
Yeah, something like that. You can also either defeat them or whatever it is, convert them, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool that there's 2 different kind of layouts of cards that you can acquire either instantly cheaper and get something cheaper, or invest a little bit more to get the card that will then give you whatever, long-term bonuses throughout the game or end game scoring or something like that. And then there's also throughout the course of the game, there will be an extra spot in the middle. That's a public spot that can be, that you can place a worker on. And then also a few end game scoring things that come up that I always forget about when I play that game. I'd never pay attention to them. And then most of the way through the game,
the
I'm
first ones that are revealed. They get revealed before the worker spots are.
I know they do, but I totally forget about them. So I don't know. Is there anything else you would say to maybe clarify a little bit better how this game works?
Well, I would say this is worker placement, but it's worker placement where you don't really own your own workers, at least not consistently every round. There's a pool of specialized workers by color. And then at the beginning of every round, you are going to be playing a paladin card, one of your own paladin cards to give you a couple workers. And then you're going to be drafting from the tavern 4 other workers. I'm not sure if it's ever 3. I think it is always 4.
I think so too.
And then that's just what you have to work with each round. You can carry over, I think, up to 2 of them every round. If you're doing that, it's not very efficient. So don't do that unless it's just dire. But beyond that, you're just cycling through all these guys. So once again, Shem Phillips is like, worker placement? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was not good accent, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, so that's true. So I don't know much about two of the North Sea games, but in Raiders in the North Sea, he was like worker placement, but whenever you place a worker, you also pick up a worker and do that one. And then Architects
Yeah.
was like you start with all of your workers at the beginning of the game, right? Like a
And they
lot.
compound every time you use one.
Yeah. Yeah, right. The spots you pick get better the more often you go to them, but you can also like steal
Yeah.
other people's workers and all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then this one is like the workers you have every round are different, and you draft them, which I
Hmm.
think is really cool. Also, I
And then
like
Viscounts was like, these aren't actually workers. We'll just call them workers. They're placeholders.
yeah, that I mean, but that wasn't even worker placement. That game's not worker placement. That's
No, it's
I
not.
don't know what you would call it, but
Yeah.
so
Did you have a cool thought?
well, I was gonna say also that there I think of all those games, this is the only one with a special like wild worker. So the purple workers,
Oh, yeah.
basically, there's different colored workers that can only be and on your board for most of the actions, or maybe yeah, pretty like most of the actions, they will require at least one worker of a specific color, and then probably one or two. It's usually two of two different specific colors, and then a third color
Hmm.
of any color, third worker of any color. Um, but then there's also these purple workers that can be used as a wild for any color, which is super cool. Except whenever you get one, you also have to take a debt card, which can come back to bite you later in the game, basically.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's a cool. I like the implementation of having wild workers also in a game where having specific workers is important.
Yeah, and then their power is just slightly mitigated by you're going to get penalized every time you acquire a wild
Well,
worker, the criminal. Like you have to get the
the thing is,
corruption card, I think.
you actually don't get penalized. Actually, you get rewarded right away because you draw one of those purple cards that will probably give you a coin or two coins, right? And
Hmm.
you might get penalized later if you haven't gotten rid of your purple cards.
Yes, exactly. And some engines you can build can actually rely on corruption.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that it's not like this worker is just inherently superior. There's a couple things attached to it that you also have to be aware of when you play with it.
yeah. And so if the option comes up, like at the beginning of the round, it's like in a two-player game, there's like three different cards that flipped up. They give you like your three different cards that each have those four different workers on them that you can pick. It's
Hmm.
not a guarantee that like the first player is going to take the one with the most purple workers on it. Like if they don't want to take those, whatever they are, the debt cards or the corruption cards, then they might
Yeah,
not take it. And I feel like actually that's happened a lot in our games where I feel like I'm more prone to take the purple workers than you are actually.
I think so. At least
Yeah,
last game.
yeah, for sure. So I like
Just
that.
what a cool system though. It's like this whole track that kind of weaves throughout the game because you take a purple worker, you've got more abilities with it. You take a corruption card, which is likely to give you a certain amount of coin, which also helps. But then by taking that corruption and removing coin from the tax bank, as soon as the tax bank runs out of coin, an inquisition happens, and then whoever has the most corruption cards is going to get penalized.
Yes,
It's
which
just it's
yeah,
genius.
which at the base level you're like, well then whoever took the most purple workers is going to get screwed, but not necessarily because there are ways in the game to get rid of purple workers or to get rid of those purple cards.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you already have taken a few, it's like, well, I might as well just keep getting the coin off of
Yeah,
these. Like, I'm not going to get
right.
hurt any worse than I already am.
Yeah, exactly. It's either you are or you aren't going to get punished, and if you know you are, well, might as well just accrue some more cards because either way you're going to get punished the same amount. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I definitely like that part of it. Why don't you talk a little bit more about what you like though, because you definitely like this game more than I do.
Sure. I mean, I'll just start with the aesthetics. I know the sort of the odd cartoony art style, at least for the cards, is a little different, and not everyone likes that. I don't really mind it though. It adds a certain charm to the game. But then besides that, the overall aesthetic of the boards, the color combos, it's all very sort of foresty, soft green. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah,
you're looking at the main boards and the board in the center, but then it's complemented by the reds and the blues and the yellows of the points. It's a very good overall visual appeal, and seems like all of the Shem Phillips, Sam McDonald games have that persona to them. I don't really like Raiders of Scythia as much. They went a little bit of a different route there, but that's
Yeah, they
okay.
definitely did.
Yeah. But that is one of the main things I appreciate. I just like looking at the game. I like looking at all the West Kingdom games. They look fantastic.
I just imagine you sitting in the living room just staring at the trilogy on your shelf. Like,
Sometimes
man, I
I
just
do.
like looking at these games.
I mean, that's where all the games are. Sometimes I'll just sit there on the couch and just stare at my collection, and
You're
I
like
feel powerful.
you're like a king staring at his like treasure trove. You're just like, my gold.
I'm like Thrain in the Hobbit
Yeah,
trilogy when he's
basically.
like walking through his gold halls. Yeah. So yeah, there's
I'm just imagining you're like,
anyway.
I'm not willing to part with it. Not one single piece.
I will not sell them.
That's funny.
People come over to try to like borrow my games. I'm like, no, away with you.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, Nate, next time you want to borrow a game.
Psh.
Anyway, this is going off the rails. I
It
like
is.
that. I also like the unique worker placement system. Not only the concept of you don't own your own workers except for over a given round, I guess. But then the concept that almost every worker place you go on requires more than one worker to go. It's almost like you're spending resources.
It
It's a little bit closer to that.
It feels really painful, actually, at the beginning of the game.
It does feel really painful, but then there's ways you can make those more efficient by when you get those were the workshops, I think, out. You can start covering the beginning space of some of those worker places, and then you can make those spots in the future cheaper. Which Shem Phillips himself told me is a very important strategy, so you can trust that. But then not just that you have your own worker places you can go on, but then there's those powerful central spots that appear in the middle of the board that are then competitive, which really adheres to, at that point, the common worker placement mechanism. Yeah, man, it's dope. There's so many mechanisms, or maybe not mechanism. There's threads of material woven throughout this game that all interact with each other. The fact that you have these different tracks on the left side of your board between, what is it, like strength, faith, and like influence or something. I forget what the blue one is. But depending on how high those are, those let you do a thing to a certain value elsewhere. And if you have one lower and you're just focusing on the other ones, you're really going to be mitigating what you can do in parts of the game. But you kind of have to focus on one or two of those tracks, because the higher you get them, you're going to get points at the end of the game, but then they're letting you do more powerful things over the course of the game too.
Right, because
it's genius.
That's the thing about this game, is that you cannot be a jack of all trades in this game. Because if you try and evenly kind of spread what you're doing, you're not going to do it very well. So like, for instance, what you were just talking about, the tracks on the left, you're not going to get all three of them to the top, but the top is where you get the big points. So you want to make sure that you focus on at least one to get it to the top, and then kind of get the other two as high as you can, and you're going to score a lot more points that way. And it's the same thing for kind of whatever your strategy is in the game. You kind of have to have a focus, kind of a focal point for your strategy, and focus on something. So like your player board also, I was talking about earlier, how there's a lot of different places that you can go on your player board, a lot of different options. And most of those can be done like 7, 8, 9 times, whatever. But the more you do them, kind of the better they get, but also the more expensive they get. But the thing is that you're not going to be able to do all of them to their full potential. And so you have to kind of pick something to focus on. And usually whatever you pick to focus on is also going to affect your character traits over there. So it's interesting. There's a lot of different kind of tendrils, a lot of different avenues that you can go down, but you actually have to kind of pick something and focus on it, and then kind of see what else works into that. But you can't just spread yourself too thin, or else you'll get destroyed.
Yeah. It's genius. Is there anything you dislike about the game?
Obviously there is, because I have it lower than you. One thing I don't like too much about this game, which is probably something you do like, actually. Out of curiosity, do you think you can guess what's something that you do like about this game that I probably wouldn't like as much?
Something I like that you would dislike.
Not hate, but I just kind of dislike it, especially compared to how much you like it.
Is it the aesthetic?
No, although that is also maybe a little bit of it. I'm not a huge fan of the art. I get that people like it, and that's okay. I think it's fine, and I like that it's consistent and that it's unique. I'm not a huge fan, but it doesn't kill the game for me.
Hmm.
This game's too solitaire for me. There is very little
Oh,
player
yeah.
interaction, like too little player interaction. Most of what you do is on your central board, and then yeah, throughout the game, there are some public worker spots that'll get opened up to both people, and there's the other place where you can place some things, and so you might like somebody might take something a spot that you want over there also, but that's
Hmm.
it. The majority of this game is kind of solitaire, and I prefer a little more interaction in games, because I like games where you kind of have to pay attention to what the other person is doing, or where at least
Hmm.
you're benefited by paying attention to what the other person does. In this game, that's that it doesn't really matter what the other person is doing, really, for the most part. So that's one thing I don't like too much. I also feel like this is a minor thing. I don't care that much about this, but I feel like the theme doesn't mesh with the mechanics, with the mechanisms so much. It
Hmm.
feels pretty detached for me. Architects is a little easier because there's kind of like a main board and you can see the different places you're going and the things that you're doing. This game is just like you just have some different spots on your board and you're doing this to get the blue pieces and to get your blue thing up. And like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I just feel like it doesn't kind of mesh as well for me.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I would say the other thing is that you were saying earlier that you like kind of how the game looks. I feel like it's a little too chaotic looking. Now the iconography is really really good in Shem Phillips games, I think, and I like also of course that it's consistent throughout all of his games. But I think it's when you just like look at this board at this game on the table, it's just like an overload. Like there's so many different icons all over the place, and it's
Hmm.
a little like once you understand the game, it's not that bad. But it I feel like it doesn't look it kind of looks and feels a little too busy, a little too chaotic for my taste. So that's another thing, also minor. I think the biggest thing is just that the game feels a little too solitaire for me.
Sure. Which, as you know, is something I don't mind very much.
Right.
I'm a big fan of just kind of doing my own thing, building my engine. But I can see now that you're saying that how it is a little more detached in that way,
Yeah.
which objectively isn't a bad thing. It's just a player preference, I think.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think the main thing I dislike about the game is the clutter of it.
Yeah.
A little bit different from what you're talking about for like the visual chaos. For me, it's more just how hard it is to fit this game like on a table, even just for two players.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a very wide table width, like me, like if you're sitting across from me, how far you are from me across the table.
Yes.
I guess that's technically table width, probably instead of length.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's width.
Yeah. But so you have the main board, which is just kind of like a long strip that goes in the middle of the board or the middle of the table. But then you have to have space on each side of that, front and back, and then on the left and right side of it too for cards. But then you have to have just as much space on the front and back and then left and right of your own board. So
Yeah.
it gets like real hard to squish it all on that table.
No, it's yeah.
I'm even wondering, like, if you're playing this on a like an actual gaming table that has like the pool table style like indent on the inside, I feel like that'd be kind of a nightmare trying to make everything fit in
No, I
there.
mean it just depends. Like there's tables in all shapes and sizes, so like I'm sure there's plenty of tables out there that are big enough to accommodate a four-player game of this.
Mm.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay, that just gave me an idea. A place I'd like to arrive in life, not really, but it sounds fun to say, is where I have like retractable tables in my gaming room with tables specific for each game that you want to play.
Tables.
Maybe not that many tables, but maybe you have like 3 or 4 table options that are optimized for game styles.
Well, what you could have is just a bunch of layover things. Like We like when I was younger, we had this foosball table, but you could flip the foosball, take the foosball table off, and underneath it was a different layer, and then you had other like boards that you could put on top that let you play different games. So you could have that like a bunch of different like inserts basically for your gaming table that accommodate different games in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Then you only have to have one table. All
That's
right.
much less exciting, though.
Yeah, it requires so much less space too.
Yeah,
We're running a little long here, as we are wont to do, it seems.
it
So
is a
why
little
don't
bit.
we mosey on over to our designer spotlight?
Yeah, I was gonna say let's hit that transition music, but we don't have any.
You know what? You could do it. You could do it anyways if you wanted to. Just put a little something in there, a little jingle.
Okay, I'll just put a little noise right here.
I'm so
All
looking
right, that was
forward to what
great.
that is. All right. Yeah, we are talking about Bruno Cathala, the French board game designer. Not the French board game designer, although some would say the French board game designer. One of,
A French board game designer.
yes, one of the French board game designers. I've said French board game designer more times than I ever thought I would in my life. All right.
FBG or FBGD.
Sure. As always, I will start by going over his portfolio, his repertoire of games, and you can
Is that how
follow.
we start normally? I know that's how we did it last time, but I
No,
thought
no,
I
no.
started with his bio.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Fine. All right, go ahead.
All right. Um, I could probably talk for quite a while off on Cathala, just because he has quite a slew of different games.
Hmm.
In fact, if you actually go to his Board Game Geek like profile, he does not have a list of notable games. He has an abridged list of notable games, and so I'll handpick a few of those. So I'll give you an abridged list of notable games of Bruno Cathala.
Do it.
One is Shadows over Camelot is one of his older ones, as is Cleopatra and the Society of Architects, I believe is kind of the full title of that one. Jamaica is another big one that's had some lasting staying power. Is that what you say? Staying power? I think staying power.
Sure.
Longevity. Five Tribes is one of his biggest hits, as is Seven Wonders Duel. And then I would say King Domino is also, or Queen Domino is also a kind of another notable one.
And now Dragon.
I don't know if maybe that was him. It might have been him actually. I'm not sure if Dragomino was him or not. So some little quick facts on Bruno Catala's games. He has 2 games in the top 100, which is of course Seven Wonders Duel and Five Tribes, and he has 16 games in the top 1,000. Some notable games from that would be Mission Red Planet, Abyss, and one of his newest games, Splendor Duel.
Splendor
Also,
Duet.
Splendor Duet. Also, I just want to say, after I made the abridged list of notable games, I was thinking, what he has such a he seems like a very well-rounded designer. Because if you look through these games I mentioned, Shadows over Camelot is a cooperative game with a trader. Like that's that, and I think that game actually when it came out was pretty revolutionary. Maybe Battlestar Galactica had already come out. I'm not sure. But then Cleopatra and the Society of Architects was a totally different game. With I don't know exactly. I haven't played it. I was doing a little research on it earlier today, but I think it's more of a hand management type game, and then of course kind of the wow factor with all these huge plasticky pieces that you use. But then Jamaica is like a racing game, and Five Tribes is kind of called a Mancala game because Mancala is like where you're kind of taking a bunch of pieces, and as you move them across the board, you like leave a trail of them basically. But then Seven Wonders Duel, of course, is like a card drafting game with its unique design. And then King Domino is like this super light tile laying game. So he's like, it's just such a widespread array of different designs that he's done. It's pretty impressive.
I will comment on that when I get to the bio section because there's a component of that I will address.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
some of his recent games, one which I already mentioned is Splendor Duel. Another one would be Orichalcum, which has been, I feel like, getting a decent amount of buzz. That was one that just came out last year.
Hmm.
I know that some of the Dice Tower guys are pretty hot on it, so it's been getting a bit of buzz. And then a couple upcoming games. I'm sure there's more than this, but a couple verified upcoming ones that are definitely happening. One is Moon River, which is actually a further implementation of King Domino. So
What?
yeah, dude. So we've had King Domino, Queen Domino, Drag Domino, King Domino Origins, and now we have Moon River. But this one's going to be
Moon
as
River
you
Amino.
no, it's called Moon River, and so as you can tell, since it doesn't have Amino in the title, it will be a little more detached. But
Hmm.
it's still tile laying. But I guess you don't draft tiles that have two sides. You draft them the sides one at a time, and then you can put them together like they connect, and so you kind of create
Oh,
your own tiles. Um,
that's cool.
and then instead of crowns, you have like cowboys with like cows instead of crowns, and they can actually move, so they can change where they are on the board. It's not set. So that's pretty interesting. It seems like it'll offer some more options and some different strategies.
Yeah, that's
I'm
pretty
looking
cool.
forward to it. And then another one that I'm looking forward to is Lumen, which there's not too much information on this yet, but it's a two-player game where there's kind of a central board where you're kind of vying for control on different areas, but then there's also some kind of roll and write or flip and write thing that you do on your own personal board. So that one seems cool, and it looks pretty cool. Also, it has a good presentation and some good art. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's kind of. I mean, like I said, he's done a lot of games, and all the ones I've mentioned are also pretty notable games. Also, um,
Oh yeah.
but also it should be mentioned, and I'm sure you'll talk about this as well, possibly. But he seems to prefer to work with other people. A lot of his designs are co-designs. It's him and Bowser, or him and whoever. He does a lot of designs with other people. It seems like, and
Hmm.
I feel like maybe Splendor Duel and Seven Wonders Duel are the only ones he's done two-player versions of, but maybe that's also kind of his thing, is he likes to do that. I don't know. But he seems to
Yeah.
do a good job working with other people and kind of creating new versions of games. So,
Oh yeah, just by the fact that he has just as many co-designs that are super popular as his solo designs.
yeah, in fact,
It's kind of an ode to his.
I think he almost has more co-designs that, but like Five Tribes is his highest or second highest rated game. And that one was completely solo
Yeah.
design. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, then King Domino, I'm not going to say put him on the map, but expanded his influence to maybe more family communities, especially for winning the Spiel des Jahres with that.
oh, that's true. That
And that
did
was a
win the
solo
Spiel.
design.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I've got some stuff, man. Are you done with this
I,
man's
I'm
games?
done blabbering on about his games. Yes.
Ah, garbage. Well, get this, get this, get this. Bruno Cathala was born on the very day that JFK was assassinated.
Well, I have a new conspiracy now.
That Bruno Cathala is JFK reincarnated?
I can't say it this time, but come back to me at
Okay,
some
yeah,
future episode.
yeah. I got that from his website. In his words, he said it was born on the very moment JFK was assassinated. That may have just been like his website is in French and you have to click translate to English. So that may have just been a weird translation thing. I'm curious if it was like
Right. Yeah.
the same time, but I looked it up and it is just November 22nd, 1963.
Right.
So
Right.
there you go. If you ever are curious how long it's been since JFK died, just ask Bruno Cathala how old he is to the day. Maybe to the minute. I don't know.
That's great.
Uh,
Good trivia.
yeah, yeah. In his own words, Nate, he doesn't know if he's good. He just does what he likes. This was inspired by a question Ben Maddox asked him. Which shout out to Ben Maddox and his Design Notes podcast. I am using that regularly now to learn
Hmm.
bio stuff for designers when we prepare for these designer spotlights. So anyway, thanks, Ben. But I appreciate that about the guy. Over the course of that interview and other things I've seen him from, he is definitely a pretty humble fellow. He's not just putting on a show, as far as I can tell. I guess I could be wrong. I haven't spoken to him personally or know his heart or anything.
He could just be a good
But
actor.
he could be an excellent actor. But I like that his goal seems to just be enjoying what he does and making good games.
Yeah.
And he almost doesn't really seem to care what if he's succeeding or not. He described I was like getting the Kenner Spiel or the Spiel des Jahres for something recently, and he wasn't even watching or maybe even aware that the awards ceremony was going on. He just started getting texts from people saying, "Hey, congratulations!" He was like, "Congratulations for
It's
what?"
like, am I a granddad? Like, what happened?
Yeah. Is he? Does he have
I
kids?
have no
I don't
idea.
know.
That's
I
your
couldn't find anything
responsibility,
about
Cody.
that. That's true. What my responsibility extended to and produced was that he is a math and science guy. Apparently, he studied, in his words, physical measurements and materials science. So remember, he's from France, so they probably have different like names for the degrees or
Sure.
something. But he was a science and math guy, and for 18 years he worked. Get this. In the research and development for the production of new alloys.
New alloys, like different metals.
Yeah, I like steel metal compounds. I think that's what an alloy is. It's a combo of multiple metals,
Why has
right?
he not made a game about that?
I don't know. Well, maybe he has. Maybe we just
That's
don't know
true.
about it.
That's
Maybe it wasn't as
possible.
popular. But then he just, what I guess was a game hobbyist for a long time and just wanted to make his own games, and that progressively moved him away from that and into the board game design world. He had a cool perspective on German versus American games in how they relate to French games. So German games commonly, obviously, Euro games are very, very lame theme usually, and emphasis on mechanism. American games tend to be very strong theme, with sometimes not as much emphasis on mechanisms. You're just checking dice and stuff. So Bruno's view is that French games are like directly in between the two of them for the most part. So they have a strong emphasis on mechanism, but they still keep a strong emphasis on theme and like the aesthetics of the game, which is kind of the games that I like, you know?
Sounds like you need to play more Cathala games, then, doesn't it?
I do. I really do. I don't. I've played a moderate amount of them, not nearly as many as I've played. I really want to get Five Tribes and give that a try because I know
Yeah.
that's super popular. And Z Garcia, the ultimate Bruno Cathala fan, Five Tribes is his favorite Bruno Cathala game.
Yeah, I also am somewhat remiss at the fact that I have not played as many of his games as I wish I had. And so I'm looking forward to in the future kind of intentionally trying to seek out some more of his games.
Yeah. Especially just keeping an eye out for future games that are coming out, you know? Unless
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what you
like
mean.
Lumen, for example, is one that I am considering buying once that one's available.
Let me know when you get that. I'll give it a try with you.
Will do. I need to play Spender Duel with you. So
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for buying that for me.
thanks for thanking me twice now, I think,
All
on
right,
air.
shut up, Nate. Back to the podcast. On the subject of solo versus co-designs, I guess Bruno's approach. Can I call you Bruno? Is that okay, Bruno? If you're
That's
listening
fine.
right
Thank
now,
you.
Mr. Cathala, yeah. The In his words, he likes to reinvent himself in between his solo game design. So that's why he likes working with other people, is because it challenges him. He gets to experience different design styles, different design techniques, and even just different types of input. So he likes bettering himself as a designer and being more well-rounded. So it's actually one of the reasons that he'll swap between doing a solo design and then
Hmm.
doing a co-design. Which, once
Interesting.
again, I respect that. And in his words, he doesn't design for the money, so it's not a problem to like be splitting the
Yeah,
profits
right.
of a game with a co-designer, which makes sense why he does it so often. So yeah, that's my cool stuff about Bruno Cathala.
It seems like he's a rather philosophical person.
I think he does comics. Did you know that? Like he draws and writes comic strips.
Interesting. That's
The only
very
thing is
interesting.
that they're in French, so I don't know if they're funny or not.
Well, I would go out on a limb and assume that they're probably funny.
I would guess
Although it
so.
could be like more of like a like is it comic strips or is it like um oh what do you call like books that are like oh comics, what do you call that?
Comic
No, no,
book.
no, 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 not a comic book, but like a it's like a full story, but it's all like comic
Oh,
style. What do you call that? Why can I not think of what that is? A graphic novel. That's the one.
Oh.
Have you never heard that term?
I have, but that's not how I imagine a graphic novel is.
That is what a graphic novel is.
Well, it's drawn stuff. It's not like a. Sorry, I guess I should say maybe here's the clarification. When I'm talking to him doing comics, it's more like Calvin and Hobbes type comics, not like a comic book for like superheroes and whatnot. That's probably where the disconnect came in.
All right.
Because I'm like, graphic novels are not just long strips of Calvin and Hobbes. Like, what?
They should be, though. That's the thing.
Well, Nate, maybe we should just wrap it up there. Do you have any other thoughts for our dear listeners?
I have no thoughts, but I have some dull, tedious things to take care of, such as you guys should reach out to us, and you should let us know what you think of the podcast. You can do so at tabletopshop23@gmail.com, but you can also seek us out on Instagram and Facebook.
Darn straight. And you can you can comment and like and stuff. That's also very helpful. Please do that. We like to feel appreciated. Yeah, preferably a good rating. I mean, if you don't like it, I guess you can rate that too. I suppose a bad rating is better than no rating, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, probably not. Well, anyway, and remember, Bruno Cathala usually isn't as angry as he looks. Thanks for tuning in, folks. This has unfortunately been the Tabletop Shop podcast. Lots of weird stuff happened this episode. It's really not my fault, it's Nate's fault, right, Nate?
I just want to say that you should look up the picture of Bruno Cathala holding the Abyss box.
Ciao.